Heidi ho, Nick. Nick.
I'm not Nick.
Nick, you're
I'm
Nate.
Nate.
Nick is one of my mechanics.
It's funny. I've got a coworker that for some reason has this weird mental block that every now and then he will accidentally call me Nick. Now you're doing it too. I must
know,
look like a Nick.
Sorry. I was dealing with Nick at the shop all day today. Oh, I think I told you we have to move. TNT
Yep.
Customs is moving their building, so we're splitting manufacturing of Jeep parts with our truck accessories and bed liners, and we're moving that over to the auto shop. And so now I'm learning Napa Auto Tracks. Because Napa Tracks is Napa Auto Care, how they do service writing, ordering parts, figuring out how long, because there's standards on how long it should take you to change brakes and do all that kind of stuff. So I'm learning all that. So I'm dealing with the mechanics now instead of the fabricators. So I've been over there learning that. So Nick is one of our technicians, and so I've been dealing with him all day, him helping me, and so it's another whole new learning experience. Plus, that's where they build some of the custom Jeeps. They're doing a 3-link TJ 3-inch stretch in the shop.
That's pretty cool.
I'm watching Jason build brackets, and we have a steering box relocation kit they're putting on. So it's fun to watch how they do all that stuff.
Yeah, I've got a ton of thinking and planning to do for when I do the 1-tons under mine. And it's like there's so many choices to make. 3-link versus 4-link versus radius arm versus long or short or mid arms. And you go to the internet for advice and everyone's like, you have to do it the way I did it because it's perfect. And then the next guy's like, no, that's terrible. You do it the way I did it because it's perfect.
Right.
And it's, I don't know. I'm just going to have to sit down and really think about what I think I need.
And if you change any of
the way I think it should be perfect.
Right. And what works for you. And
exactly.
You obviously are going to do it yourself because you're a do-it-yourself guy. But I don't know if you've ever heard of the Summit machine, their flex joints. You may want to look into those too.
I think I have. There's a bunch of companies that make different types of joints for suspension. Yep. And there's a bunch out there. So I haven't heard of that one specifically.
Yeah, she's out of Utah. I can't remember that, up near Salt Lake, but Summit Machine, just look them up. They're
when I'm ready to start looking at parts.
Yep.
I have to get the axles ready first, and then I'll start thinking about suspension, right? And there's so much that has to be done. That Ford Super Duty front Dana 60 that I picked up, there's like all kinds of bracketry that's cast into it and welded onto it and whatever for the Ford setup that it came out of, that all of it has to come off.
That's what Jason's doing right now in the shop with one of the axles, because obviously you don't need some of those brackets when you're doing a 3-link because
I mean, you
change
pretty much the way I understand it for what I want to do. It's get it down to a bare axle housing and then get a truss kit, right? Because if you're going to work on it anyway, you might as well truss it.
Right.
And usually the truss kit will have built-in mounting solutions for your links.
Right.
So I'll need to figure out what sort of link setup in the front, which will probably be a 3-link because that's what most people do in the front, just because there's too much in the way to do a 4-link. And I guess there's other options, but I'm thinking a 3-link. So I should be able to pretty easily get a truss that'll support a 3-link. I think.
Look at TNT's website.
Yeah, right. Well, find out if you guys make a Ford Super Duty conversion truss, and then I'll look there.
Shameless plug. All right, I'll ask the guys. I'll figure it out for you.
Yeah, there you go.
So anyway, I've been crazy busy doing that, and then good news on Thursday, I'm flying to Maryland just for 2 days. People, and my youngest son is going to come out here to Wyoming and live with me. I'm pretty excited about that.
Pretty cool.
Yep.
No longer an empty house, right?
No, we're going to be crowded. So.
Yep. So people might have realized that we should have been recording a week ago, but
yes,
I was away on another trip. I was actually in Vegas
again,
a week too early for the Super Bowl. which is fine because I don't care about
football. Right.
I'm not really a football guy. So, surprise to anyone who thought all red-blooded Americans must like football. No, not me. I prefer my sports with engines in them, which is exactly what I did want to talk about, which was the weekend before I left. I got to spend the whole Saturday hanging out on the couch watching the King of the Hammers Race of Kings, which was amazing.
I just caught glimpses of it. The guys had it running in the manufacturing shop, so I really didn't have time to watch it. So
yeah,
it sounded pretty exciting from what I gathered.
I pretty much make a week of it. Because it runs the stuff I care about runs all week. They have like a trophy truck race, which is like Desert Baja style race that I don't know why. I just don't get into that. But that's the weekend before. Like that's the last weekend in January usually. And then there's the whole week from there until the Saturday. It's usually the Saturday before the Super Bowl. For whatever reason, the Super Bowl was off by a week this year. But anyway, that whole week they do like qualifying. They do the Everyman Challenge, which had a bunch of folks you're going to recognize in it, like J.K. Gear and Gadgets, Holly Fowler from Mischief Maker, the Jeepcast guys. They all raced in the race or in the Everyman Challenge. And then and then there's a UTV event, which is also kind of cool. I don't really follow a lot of the racers that are in that. But then there was the big event on Saturday, which is like the full Race of Kings. That's like the big pot and the big race. It was pretty crazy. The guy who finished physically first, right? Now, these are race-built buggies. High physically horsepower.
First in the big race?
In the big event. So it's a timed race, right? So it's because they don't start everybody at the same time and expect them all. That'd be crazy. It would just clog the whole thing up. They start 2 at a time. And that's what the qualifying was all about. That determines what order you start in. You start 2 at a time, and then you're timed, right? So if I started at the very start of the line, but the guy at the back of the line passes everybody, and even if I finish before him, his adjusted time might make him actual first place, right? So the guy who finished physically first was a UTV. He started toward the front of the pack, right? But it's this custom-built UTV on 37-inch tires, right? Think about that. A UTV with that tiny little UTV engine against these big LS-powered race vehicles. Mm-hmm. He came in physically first, right? He ended up finishing second overall because JP Gomez, who's like, there's a family, the Gomez family.
Don't they win all the time?
They, I think the last... was it 2 years in a row? His brother, Raul, won, and now JP won. But JP started way toward the back of the pack, and he did exactly that. He passed a whole bunch of people, and because he did that, even though he finished, I think, physically second, he took first place. But it was a hell of a race. It was one of these years where everybody who was at the head of the pack, because Raul Gomez was leading for like hours, it felt like. He was at the head of the pack, and then he accidentally rolled the thing on its side.
That's not good.
And then I forget how the order went, but then the guy who was second passed him and lost a transmission. Then someone passed him, and I forget what it was. Something went wrong. Did he get stuck and passed? I don't remember now. Something broke. And then JP was the one who finally finished. Or not JP. JP passed them, but the guy in the UTV was the one that finally passed them all and won. It was crazy. Oh, Casey Curry. Casey Curry was another one. He came into the pits and realized that the rear ring and pinion on, I guess he had a 9-inch base with a third member. The third member, the bearings were shot. And they're like, we know you're only, I don't know, 10 miles from the finish, but you can't drive it like this. You got to be out. And that was it. He was in first. But yeah, it was just like one thing after another. Everyone who was in first just dropped out for one reason or another. It was crazy race. If you don't watch this race, anyone who's listening, or even you, Tammy, it is a great time. And you can watch it free on YouTube. I usually pay the $30 for the premium feed because you get a bunch of extra angles and stuff. So if you're like, I wonder what's going on this trail, you can go watch it. But they have a free feed. The only downside is you have commercials you have to watch, which, whatever.
I grew up watching commercials.
Exactly. So, we're used to commercials.
Commercials are kind of fun because then you have those jingles in your head.
Yeah, right.
State Farm is there.
Right. So that was a really good time. It was a fun race. But other than that, I'm still fighting this stupid frozen shoulder problem. I think I talked about that on the last show. Yep. And I am committing to, once the shoulder is good enough, I'm going to start working on those damn axles. Because they've already been sitting in my garage now since, I think, last fall. Did I pick that up?
You'll have to take pictures and share the steps.
Yeah. So, folks listening, if I don't start talking about building axles, start to give me a hard time.
Start pestering.
That'll motivate me, I think.
That was one thing about having my blog and having a YouTube channel. I'm the type of person where if I say I'm gonna, get a lift or I'm gonna do this, I feel like, ooh, I just told the whole world I better do it. So,
well, I'm still working on the video footage from the lift on my wife's JKU. I feel like
you said you have hours upon hours.
There's so much video, and I'm
overwhelming.
I'm trying to cut it down into one fast-paced video, like off-road show style.
Right.
And it's
daunting.
It's so hard because I could do that and make it a 2-hour video, but no one's going to want to watch that.
Right.
Right. I'm trying to keep it like 30 minutes or less, right? Like a true show, right?
And it'd be different if you didn't have a job and that's all you had to do. But when you have a job and a family and you have this podcast and you're going on these trips, it's hard to get all that in.
Yep. Yeah, it's tough. So, I gotta just sit down and work on it a couple hours a week until it's done. But yeah, I keep finding other things to get done. Mm-hmm. But I hope it's gonna be good when it's finished. All right, but that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. Did you have anything else to touch on before we move along?
I just I forgot to notice my shirt. Oops. I forgot to take my shirt off, so I'm gonna get topless tonight.
Oh! It's not that kind of show, Tammy.
No. Actually, I'm starting to get hot. I have my work mechanic shirt on. We all match at the shop, Bob and Mary and all the mechanics and the fabricator guys, and so we all have those, the mechanics shirts.
Yeah, and some shops aren't heated. Is yours heated?
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay. I was going to say, you might have to dress warm because it's cold outside.
Yeah. Well, and it still gets cold because, you're opening the garage doors, pull cars in and out. And I mean, it's concrete floor, so your feet are always cold. So
yeah, I bet. Got to wear insulated boots.
And I check in. I know. I have to check in the vehicle, so you're outside and you're standing in the snow.
Yeah.
Because we had a little bit of snow, so.
Yeah, we're supposed to get snow actually tonight into tomorrow.
That's what I hear.
If we get it or not.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hope. All right. So don't forget, folks. Like and subscribe, and if you want to find our show, go to offroadinsiders.com. Also, you can look us up on YouTube or the usual social media outlets. Look for the Off-Road Insiders podcast. And if you want to send us feedback or send us an email, or if you have any requests for guests on the show, or maybe if you want to be a guest on the show, I think we need to start having more guests because I think
we do.
We're getting enough momentum that I think we should start having some more interviews.
Yes.
Not like nothing but interviews, but I think sprinkling them in more. Anyway, send us an email at offroadinsiders@gmail.com. All right, so
tonight's topic. This is a fun one. Actually, it popped up on my Facebook feed the other day about my first time leading a trail, being a trail guide. And it brought back a lot of it brought back a lot of emotions. First time is scary.
I've had lots of people ask me, how do you become a trail guide? And I'm like, well, there's not like a rule book on how to become a trail guide. You just kind of start leading trails. But
right.
I thought it would be fun to have a show about our experiences with being trail guides. Now, this isn't like you must trail guide this way. This is more or less like the way I've
Right.
done it for years and the way
Mm-hmm.
Tammy's done it, right? So I just figure we'll go through a couple things. Um, I want to start with a quick caveat. The majority of the guiding that I do is in a quasi professional sense, right? So I guided for off road consulting for like 2 years. So it's literally being paid. So that's like the definition of professional trail guiding. And for the Jeep Jamboree, which of course, there's a certain level of professionalism that has to go along with it, right? This isn't the same as just going out wheeling with your buddies. But
Right.
if that's the kind of wheeling that you do more, then some of the stuff that we're going to say tonight, you might be able to relax a little bit.
Right.
Right?
Right.
At
Right.
least from my perspective, right? So like that's
Yeah.
primarily the kind of guiding that I've done over the years. I have done plenty of just like go out with the buddies and wheel. That's kind of even more fun, but you know what I mean?
So I started out being a trail gunner at
Hmm.
women's wheeling events.
It's a great
So
way to start.
yeah.
Have an experienced
And
guide in the front, and you
right.
just make sure that the back stays together. And yeah.
And the first time I really trail guided is we had to turn around on a trail because we had to hurry up and get back.
Hmm.
And so I was a tail gunner, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm in the lead now because we all just kind of turned around, and
Yep.
the caboose is in the front.
Yep.
And
That happens
then,
sometimes.
yeah, one time a group, I got hooked up with Montgomery County. I forget what they were. Anyway, they go, "Oh, let's go wheeling," and I'm like, "Okay, I'll go with you." And we're all there at Roush Creek, and they're like, "Well, you're leading us," and I'm like,
What do you mean?
"Oh, I got lost twice, but we had a blast. It was in the winter, and I actually the only way I did it was not because I knew where everything was on at Roush Creek, is because I had Maprika.
Yep. That's actually one of the points
Saved
I
me.
wanted to touch on,
Yes.
right? Even if you know where you are, even if you know the park, like I know AOAA pretty darn well. You could probably plop me down anywhere in that park, and I'll be able to find my way home, right?
Right.
But there's always going to be some trail you haven't been down. And it's
Mhm.
really easy, especially when there's like this crazy crosswork of trails, to get yourself mixed up. Like, which trail am I actually on right now? Did I make a left
Right.
when I was supposed to make a right? There's some intersections at that park that are like you come into what looks like a circular opening, and there are trails leading off in 28 directions.
Right.
So it's
And
like, which
those
one do I want to
little
go down?
and those little apps, like, you
Yeah.
can track where you are.
Yeah, Maprika has been great for
Yeah.
AOAA, but unfortunately, the developer that maintains it has kind of like fallen off the
Not
planet or
kept up with
something.
it. Yeah.
So they're starting to use OnX, which isn't terrible, but I got to be honest, Maprika was so much better because it was like handcrafted, um,
Just for
just for the park.
yeah.
And I don't know. We'll see if OnX comes along. Apparently, well, I don't want to get too off topic, but I want to. AOAA is currently working with OnX to try to improve the trail maps.
Um, tr Gray Matter Jeep wants to know trail gunner or tail gunner? I think it's tail gunner. Did I say
Yeah,
trail gunner?
I think
I
you
think
did, but it
it's
might have just been an accident. But
yeah.
yeah, tail gunner is usually
I
what
think
we
it's
call it.
yeah.
I have heard
So
it both ways, though.
so the other I had the past couple of years I do Jeep Mama trail rides,
Hmm.
and people from all over the country have come. I did Mojave Desert, the Rubicon Trail. I ended up being the trail guide for that, and never been on the Rubicon Trail, and I'm guiding it. But another thing that saves you on this stuff, and Moab, I did a few trails in Moab, is Gaia GPS. So
Hmm.
these and Hole in the Rock in Utah. And these places, there are some places there are no markers. You don't know where you are. But if you have these apps and you can, or Gaia GPS, you can download the maps and you can just follow along. But being a trail guide is more than just having that app, those apps and following a
Yeah,
map. And
right,
that's what we're going to talk about tonight
right. So I
is
wanted to touch
other
on some
things.
basics first, right? If it's your first time leading, the best advice I can give you is don't panic, right? It might feel like a ton of responsibility. And the first time I guided for off-road consulting, I was like beside myself because I'm like, what if I mess it up? What if they don't like off-road consulting anymore? What if something happens to the rig and like all
What if we
kinds of
get
stuff.
lost?
Yeah, right. What if I look like an idiot? And to be honest, I mean, I've made plenty of wrong turns trail guiding. Like it happens. You just
Right.
make the best of it. You do
And
your
you
thing.
just be honest, like, oops,
Yeah.
sorry, I
Yeah.
turned
Like
left when I should have
if
turned right.
if you have to stop the group and back up, like that's inconvenient, but they're gonna understand, right? If you're like, oops, I just started heading us down a red trail, that's a bad idea. We need to turn around, right? It happens. And as long as you are like personable and honest with the group and you don't make mistakes all freaking day long, generally they're all going to forget about those couple wrong turns and they're going to remember the good
Mhm.
time they had,
Mhm.
right? And again, if this is like just folks you wheel with that you're leading around a park, someplace they've never been before or whatever, it's so much less stress because these are just like friends, right? If you're doing it for like the jamboree or whatever, then obviously it feels a little more important. But even still, I'm going to tell you, the participants don't care as long as they have a good time.
Yep.
Like they don't care.
Exactly.
So
Another responsibility you have as a trail guide is to ensure everybody has a good time, like Nate just said, and
yeah,
everybody is being safe.
yeah, yeah,
Those are
absolutely.
some important things.
Yeah, and you should
Um,
definitely have some safety gear with you, some
mhm.
first aid stuff, or some first aid gear, maybe water in case. I've even thought about carrying gas cans because I've had a couple cases where somebody in my group didn't
Yep.
stop for gas before they got on the trail.
I've
Um,
had that happen, yeah.
it's like, is that really your responsibility or is it theirs? Yeah.
But then you're holding up the whole group because you can't just like, sorry,
Yeah.
you
Sorry, we're
ran out of
leaving your Jeep
gas.
out here. Now
Right.
that's almost what you'd have to do. You'd have to like load them up in somebody else's Jeep, go back and get gas. Now, if you have a tail or mid gunner in your group, you could send them back with them,
Right.
right? They can go get gas, come back and get their Jeep.
And then meet you guys wherever you are.
Which brings up another good point that I didn't put in our list. If you're the tail gunner or the mid gunner, it's not all cake, right?
Right.
You may be asked to do work, and that work might involve towing out a broken down Jeep. It might involve driving a member back to the trailhead. It
And you
might
might miss
involve
out on the
leading somebody
fun.
out. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's happened a couple times. And with the jamboree, sometimes our group gets so big that we make a judgment call and we split the group in half. And then I end up leading one group, and Penny, who normally leads the group, leads the other. Right. So then, like, I go from, oh, this was going to be an easy day where I just follow Penny and the group around to I need a trail.
Mhm.
So it happens. Right.
Another thing too is it's always fun. I guess it depends on where you are. Is to maybe like when we were on the Mojave Desert, Mojave Road, like knowing some fun facts.
Mm-hmm.
The off-road parks, maybe not so much, but maybe you can say point out like, oh, down this road here is a really cool, you know, rock obstacle or whatever it may be. But it helps to point out fun facts. I don't know if it's still going on at Rush Creek, but there's a gnome. Isn't there a gnome somewhere where if you find the gnome, you get like a free pass? I don't know if they're still doing that.
I don't know.
Hidden out
AOAA
in the
has
park.
the Bigfoot and the Goat Man. I don't know
Yeah.
about Roush Creek. I haven't been to Roush Creek in a long time.
So yeah, neither have I. 2019, I think,
Mine's
was
like
the last time.
2010 or something. No, actually, I was
No,
there.
you
I was
were
there once.
there because you were there the same time I was one time.
I was
But you were
there.
guiding a monthly guide maybe,
Yeah,
and
I
I
was there
forget.
tail gunning for off road consulting,
Uh-huh.
but I haven't had a membership at Roush Creek since 2010, I think.
So, what
So
else do we have?
tread lightly is important.
Yeah,
Try to I don't expect the guide to be like policing the trail, but I do think it's important to remind the folks in your group that they shouldn't be littering, they shouldn't be leaving crap around,
right.
and
Not to go off the trail and,
yeah, yeah,
try to just tread
and we've
lightly.
we've kind of already touched on this that being able to wheel is not necessarily the only skill you need. right? Like that's part of it, because people are going to look to you to be like
a leader.
Yeah, not just a leader. What's the word I'm looking for? They're going to look to you for advice, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
more experience you have and the better you are at the sport, of course, the better guide you might make. That doesn't mean you have to be a master mechanic and you have to be a crazy rock crawler. But if you're guiding green trails, it's probably good that you have experience on green trails or maybe blue trails, right? Because you want to appear as though you're not a newbie as well yourself, right?
And you're
But
probably going to have to spot depending
yep,
on who's in your group.
yep,
So you should have experience spotting other Jeepers, and knowing how to get that Jeep over a rock or an obstacle or through the water, whatever it may be.
yep, yep. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Like you need to understand the principles of how to safely off road.
Right.
But beyond just knowing how to wheel, it's like you got to be friendly. You got to be able to organize the group. You got to be able to plan a trail that's
Mhm.
going to fit within a day, right? If you're out using AOAA as an example, if you're out at the far end of the park and the gate's going to lock in 15 minutes, you've messed up.
You got to
Right?
get those people, yeah,
Yeah, because they're counting on you to get
to
out
get
of the
them home
park, and if the
safely.
if the
Yeah.
gate's locked, then, like, that makes you look like you're poor planning, right? And the
Right.
park might get mad at you, right? Like, we had that the one time I had you guys out. Remember that you were at
Yes. Yes. I was
AOA?
gonna
We
I was
were
gonna say I remember one time at AOAA and I was
Yeah,
trying to remember who I was with and it
we
was
had someone get stuck, I think it was. We were out at Brownie Rubble, and we lost track of time, and before I know it, I'm like, "We got 15 minutes to get out of here, and we're all the way back at Brownie Rubble." So I called the park office, and they're like, we have a fine now if you don't get back in time. I'm like, oh crap. So
to,
luckily they were kind enough to let us off with a warning. But yeah.
right. Yeah. Oh, we were
So,
bad at that.
and if you're not in a park, that's probably not as big of a deal. But you also don't want
No.
people to be lost in the woods in the middle of the night either.
Right. And
So
some people may not have off-road lights and all
yeah.
that kind of
Anyway,
stuff.
the point I'm trying to make is it's not just being able to wheel. It's the ability to plan a trip, plan a
Mhm.
day, right? So important
And
stuff.
and to have patience with new people who may not
Yeah.
know what they're doing. They may not know they have to air down. You have to
Yep.
They may even be signed up for the wrong trail and you have to talk to these people like what are your capabilities? What You
Yeah.
have to look at the vehicle, what are their capabilities?
Yeah, that's kind of where I wanted to go next, right? I usually walk the line while we're lining up, and
Mhm.
I talk to each driver, and I just have a quick conversation with them. Like, it doesn't have to be anything formal. You don't need a checklist or a clipboard or something. Just kind of get a feel for them and how long they've been doing this. Take a quick look at their Jeep and figure out, or I shouldn't just say Jeep, take a look at their vehicle and see what you think it's capable of. But it's not just the vehicle's capability, right? In your
Mhm.
hands, maybe that vehicle is capable of more than it is in their hands, and it's their vehicle, right? So you got to try to judge both and make a judgment call on whether they're capable of the trails you had in mind for the day or that you had planned for the day, right? So that's hard to tell you how to do,
Mhm.
right? Like that's a thing you kind of learn with experience. The first time someone comes off the trail and they're mad at you because they put a little scratch in the paint, you feel terrible. But you got to remind yourself, like, they knew what they were getting into, and you did your best. As long as you did your best, that's the important thing.
I actually on the Rubicon Trail, someone I didn't know joined us and she lived just like a hop, skip, and a jump from the Rubicon Trail. And her rig was fully capable, but I had no idea she had only driven gravel roads.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, her Jeep was more capable than probably my Jeep with the clearance and all that. And we went up an obstacle and she got a dent in her door and she was crying.
Yeah,
And
it's a big deal.
I'm a pretty compassionate person. And I basically said, man the F up. We are on the Rubicon Trail. We are
Yeah.
not turning around. Some of us have taken vacation and driven across the country.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're crying. We're on the Rubicon. She had no clue. And like, how do you not know? But anyway, that was the one time I was just kind of like, sorry, no sympathy here. We're on the Rubicon Trail. We're doing this.
Yeah,
But
well, that's kind of what I mean, right? Like, you do everything in your power to give them
right,
the best day you can, but at the end of the day, if they came in with a completely wrong expectation, and it didn't come out before you hit the trails, like, that's it. They're with you. You got to
right.
do your best to get them along, right? And
And
you
actually, she at the end was like, oh my God, she realized where she was and what she was doing. And she's like, I just wheeled the Rubicon Trail.
yeah,
Her first ever trail, really.
yep, that's crazy. That's like a
So I
bucket list
know.
item for me, and she's just
I
like,
know. Do 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 do. She lives right down the road and she has no idea what this is. And
yeah, there's no crying in baseball. That's right, gray matter.
yeah, right. So, but then there are other times during a women's wheeling event at Roush Creek, these women, it's their first ever time and they're scared to death. And we're on a green trail. And I'm not going to be that like, man the F up. I'm going to be, it's
Right,
okay.
right.
Your Jeep's going to be okay. I'll help you
Yep,
through this. They're each different situations. And like you said, you kind of got to like weigh those and figure out
yep.
where you're at.
I usually try to level set, especially on greens, right? Because I see this a lot with the Jeep Jamboree. Again, I do greens. Obviously, my Jeep has been on black trails. I've driven black trails, right? I don't have to do greens. I do it because I actually enjoy meeting people at the
Mhm.
beginning of that
Yep.
off-road journey, right? But you know, they're looking at my Jeep, which is like, there's hardly, like, the fenders are all beat up. It's on relatively tall, like, it's not crazy built, but
Right.
it's taller than what they've got. And they're like, "Can I even do this?" Or they're looking at Penny's Jeep. She's on 35s, right?
Mhm.
And they're like, "Can I even do this?" And you know, I tell them, we take bone stock vehicles through this trail
Right.
every year, every single year, and we've never had any major issues, right?
Right.
And that sort of helps them out. But you'll have someone in the group, especially at the Jamboree, where they have a built Jeep, and if you were to look at the Jeep itself, you're like, yeah, this person could be off doing black trails.
Mhm.
Like, they got the tires, they got the protection. It's a Rubicon, right? Like, this thing is capable. You talk to the person, and they're like, no, they just kind of they bought it last summer. They did a bunch of work to it, or they had someone do a bunch of work to it, and this is their first time on
Yes.
the trail. Because they're like, I wanted to go, and like, they don't know anything about the sport. They started with the Jamboree, right? So, but yeah, that's kind of what I mean. You got to try to judge both the vehicle and the
Right.
person, and the driver.
And the thing about like what you were saying about helping that new person introduce them into this world of off-roading, it's fulfilling at the end of the trail when they're like, "Oh my goodness, this is like the best thing ever." And you showed them a fun time and they,
Yeah,
that is really that like gives me chills when women still thank me to this day for that one trail women's wheeling day where Courtney and we guided a bunch of women. First time ever. Some of them were not even in Wranglers. They were in, I forget what Jeeps they were in, like a Renegade or a
we
Grand
had
Cherokee or something. I can't remember.
we had somebody in one of the new, well, new at the time, the Cherokee Trailhawk, like
Hmm.
the new
Oh,
redesigned one that
yeah.
looks like a
Yeah.
tennis shoe.
Right. But yeah,
And
that's
you know
very
what? He
fulfilling.
he actually had training, and he knew, like, he had been trained by Off-Road Consulting.
Hmm.
So, like, we knew Kyle knew the guy. Kyle was still guiding with the Jamboree at the time. And we went to Kyle and we're like, what do we got to worry about with this guy? And he's like, do not worry at all. And we're looking at the Jeep. We're like, are you sure about that? He's like,
Right.
yes, that guy knows what he's doing. I'm like, okay. And he did. He did great.
Yep.
I mean, he did amazing. We didn't have to talk to him all day. I mean, we talked to him, but we didn't have to. We didn't have to guide him. We didn't have to do anything. He was perfect.
Like you said, you never know.
You never
Never
know.
know. Right. Um,
So, anyway,
It's
where were we?
always, let's see, know your vehicle's capabilities. I think we're down to driver's meeting, right?
Yeah. So I think this is an important part of
Totally. Because
like
there's so many things new people don't know.
yeah, I mentioned walking down the line. That's not the driver's meeting. That's me talking to each driver to try to get a feel for, like, who they are and whatever. Driver's meeting is different, right? We usually get into the park, we find a big open area, we park everybody, and all the guides and the drivers will get out, and we'll just have a quick introduction, like who the heck are we? Sometimes we'll talk about how long we've been wheeling. Sometimes we'll talk about um, where everybody's from, right? We'll ask in the group who's got an auto versus a manual, right? Which might not seem all that important, but it helps people open up and get sort of like into the group. Again, these are all strangers usually. They get into the group, that gives them something to talk about, and we learn a little bit something about what we're dealing with for the day, right? Figure out what kind of vehicles they've got, where they came from, expertise, like how long have they been doing this? Is this their first time they've ever been on the trail? That kind of stuff. And a recent one, it's like electric vehicles, because they're showing up now.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good thing to know, because
are you fully charged?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're
once
hybrids,
they're not.
right?
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, when a Tesla's dead.
Oh yeah, it's just like dead.
Yeah, you can't like just. Well, we're gonna tow it. There's
lots of. Nope, it did. But with the electric Wranglers, we've noticed. I don't know if it's the extra weight or the kind of tires they put on them. Maybe they're thinner walled to save on rolling resistance. I don't know. They cut a lot of sidewalls.
Interesting.
I don't know what it is, and it's not all of them. Some of them have like a nice meaty all-terrain tire. I guess if you get a certain trim package or whatever, but the ones that are equipped for street, they're just, the tires are these slim. The sidewalls cut real easy. I've seen 2 or 3 of them cut on the trail. So that's a thing to try to like judge at the beginning, and then keep track of who those people are and try to keep them away from anything pointy.
Stay away from all those tree stumps.
Yeah. It's usually rocks. AOAA has a bunch of those flat, like shale rocks.
Yeah.
It's not actually shale, but looks, if you understand what I'm saying by shale, you'll understand what these look like. They're like flat, and you get a sidewall against it, and if the sidewall's not thick enough, it'll just cut right through it.
And you also, during those driving meetings, you kind of want to go over, I guess they're not really rules, but they're trail etiquette. They are kind of rules, like make sure there's enough space in between the vehicles. Let a vehicle in front of you go over the obstacle before you start it. Let them go up the hill. Keep the person behind you in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, that's a big one. And somebody in chat was saying that just earlier, and I knew we were going to get to it eventually. We usually use the rule, if you can't see the vehicle behind you, then stop.
Stop. Yep. And then the person up there,
they'll catch up, right? And if the guy in front of you doesn't see you, if he's following the rules, he should also stop, right? So the whole group should end up stopping. It should be like this chain effect.
Right.
It doesn't always work out that way. But that's the rule we try to portray.
Some people do not get that. That is one thing that just bugs me beyond belief, is when people don't do that. In Colorado, that happened to me one time. This girl just keeps going and going. I'm like, you're not even going to the right place.
Yeah. So where are you going?
I'm not going into that story, because that's a whole nother. That could be a whole episode.
Oh, and something else I forgot to put on the list. We like to ask if anybody is trained in medical services, like if there's anyone who's a trained EMT, or even if they're just CPR certified. We try to figure out who has medical kits. We usually carry our own, but not every participant will, right? So it's just good to have an idea of how much of that actually is in the group, so that if there is an emergency, we have that at hand. Yeah.
And sometimes in these groups, you have to teach people how to air down their tires. You have to teach them how to put it into 4-wheel drive or 4-low. And like a good thing is when do you go into 4-low? When would you use 4-high?
Yep.
That kind of thing.
That's another good point. With the Jamboree, we find it easiest that once we leave that driver's meeting, we have everybody put it in 4-low.
And you just stay there. Which
sounds like a waste, right? To an experienced wheeler, you're like, you don't have to do that. You're just putting that extra RPMs into your engine, and you're making the transfer case work harder. Realistically, a lot of these folks, especially at the newer end of the spectrum, they don't understand yet when to do one or the other, and it just makes the whole day easier if you stick them in 4-low. And as they get more experience, they'll be like, I don't need 4-low right now. I'm going to put it into 4-high, that kind of thing. Or 2-wheel for that matter, right?
Right.
Honestly,
again, it's all.
I find with the TJ or the LJ in 4 low, I actually get better fuel economy for the whole day. I don't understand exactly how that operates because you'd think it would be you're moving so much slower for the amount of RPMs you're turning. You'd think it would get significantly worse fuel economy, but I don't know. I can get through a whole weekend at the Jeep Jamboree on 1 tank of gas, which
Sure.
when I used to be switching in and out of 2 and 4, I would get maybe a day and a half. I'd have to fill it up in between the 2 days. So I don't know. It's my experience. It doesn't seem to make sense if I think about it mechanically. It doesn't make sense, but that's the way it works.
You also have to keep the group together. You have to communicate, let them know, hey, there's this big hole up here. Be careful on the left.
Yeah,
just
we
communicate a
we
lot.
pretty commonly share stories, right? I mean, Penny and I have been guiding the Jeep Jamboree Trail together for 6 years now, maybe longer. So we have a bunch of stories of when we were out on the trail together, right? So we'll like banter back and forth, and it's kind of fun that way. And the participants get like they can chime in, people
Right.
talk. It opens
Yes.
people up, right? And then they become more of a group of wheelers and not just a
Yep.
bunch of people following someone through the woods, right? So
That
I think that works out.
that camaraderie
Yeah.
is so it's so unique to the off-roading community. I actually enjoy that. What else do we have? I think we've got it all, right?
Yeah, two big things I wanted to close with is one, make sure that the group develops a bit of trust in you, right? Make sure that they know that you're not going to lead them astray. They know that you're not going to uh, leave them to fend for themselves or whatever. And that might sound obvious, but like they need to trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's already some implied trust, but sometimes they're just like stuck with you. They don't know you. They have more faith in whatever organization has set up your run than they do in you. But by the end of that day, they should have some faith in you, right? And that's just a thing you got to work on. And the other thing is to try to keep attentive to what the people in the group need, right? And that's like simple stuff like, do they need to stop and pee?
Right.
What time is lunch? Do they want a snack? Are there a
Right.
bunch of kids in the group? You know how kids get when they're crammed up in the back of a vehicle all day? They get real
Right.
rammy. You're going to have to stop a little more often to let the kids get out and burn off some energy, right? They're probably having a good time, but kids are kids,
So it's interesting you talk about the trust. One of my Crawling for Cops events, I was in a group. I wasn't guiding or anything, but 3 police officers from Maryland heard about this, and they all had Jeeps, never been off-roading before in their lives. And they like decided, oh, we're going to go support this group because they were doing a fundraiser for police officers. And so they signed up for Blue Trails, and they were all in stock Jeeps, and they all 2 of the guys ended up selling their Jeeps after this event, and one of them's like, I'm never going off-roading again because the trail guide just was like, ha ha ha, I'm just gonna go do these trails. They went on Blue 23. I don't know if you've ever been to Roush Creek and been on Blue 23. That is not
I don't know.
it's just basically, it's a medium-sized rock garden. It's like a blue rock creek.
Okay.
And these guys were scraping. They were totally fine. Their Jeeps did totally fine, but they didn't understand. And so
if they didn't know and they didn't know how the trails were classified and the guide didn't try to help them out with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So a bad guide can ruin an experience for people. So yeah, every time I was on Blue 23, I ended up becoming friends with one of the police officers because he lived in Montgomery County where I lived. And so every time I was on Blue 23, I would take a picture of it and send it to him, and we would laugh about it. And so, but yeah, you have to, like you said, earn people's trust. So, yeah, women go on the right. That's funny. When you take a bathroom break, women go on the right and men go on the left because we all know women are always right.
Yep. Yeah, that's something they remind us of at the Jamboree every year. Steve Risk
Everybody's
standing up there on the PA system. Women are always right. I think he just says that because his wife's there.
right. So,
but it does set
standard.
a standard, right? So that somebody of the opposite sex doesn't walk in on someone going to the bathroom, right?
Squatting in the bush, peeing.
A lot of people, I'll say more so women than men, but even in some cases, men are already like uncomfortable going to the bathroom in the woods. Anything you can do that helps that out is probably a good thing.
I don't doesn't bother me anymore because I've been doing it for so long. So,
last summer, I think it was last summer, we had a woman in our group. She had this whole like pop-up tent.
Oh yes.
It just like popped up and she was able to do her thing inside of the tent. Then she'd pop it back down when she was done. I'm like, my wife needs that.
Crazy. You see a lot of Jeepers on the beach with those.
Yeah.
So, all right, folks, don't forget we're at offroadinsiders.com and we're on Instagram. And please email us any suggestions you may have for show ideas, guests at offroadinsiders@gmail.com. And none of those have dash. It's not offroad dash. It's just offroad, all one word.
Yeah, it's funny how I made such an effort to make sure that our logos all had a dash between off and road.
I know. Oh, well.
But none of our domains or emails do. Sorry about that, guys.
It all works. It all works out.
All right. So I didn't get any news, but Tammy, you did.
I
So
found two things. So I want to do the second one first, just because I know.
Nikki's
so,
here. Nick's in the chat.
Oh, Nikki G's here. Hi, Nikki G.
What if I identify as
a I was wondering.
My pronouns are hey you.
I'm a he, but I identify as a she. Where should I go to the bathroom?
I'm gonna say I have not run into that yet, but I don't know what to tell you.
If you have,
you're in the woods at this point, right? There's a certain amount of modesty you have to put away,
right? So this news article was, you can go to jeepmama.com and it's my latest blog post, but I just find it ironic because for years you always see these top off-road vehicle, and Nate and I did top camping vehicles.
Yeah,
and you always see these articles and it's never the Jeep, or if they're talking about the Jeep, it's always like it's too bumpy or it doesn't get good gas mileage. Yeah. So I put together Jeep Mama's top 4 off-road vehicles. And so you can go over to my blog and you can read it yourself. But those were my 4. I picked, of course, number 1 is Jeep, the Rubicon. And this is for 2024 models.
You seem biased though, Tammy.
Yeah, I just a little. And then the Ford Bronco.
Truly a completely balanced analysis of vehicles.
It is, because at Mopar, this is our news for the day, at moparinsiders.com, they have a news article. Guess which SUV is the best SUV of 2024, picked by cars.com.
It's got to be the Ford Bronco, right?
Wrong. It's the Jeep Wrangler, best SUV of 2024. Cool. I'm like shocked. This is a first. The Wrangler is never the number 1.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said, and this is, I've had a lot of people over the years come up to me and ask why they should buy a Jeep or if they should buy a Jeep, and I always start with all the caveats that come with owning a Jeep Wrangler. You know, they're bumpy, they're noisy, they're whatever, right?
Right.
So, and that's still true today. The brand new Jeeps, like they're a lot better than they used to be, but they're still not like most other SUVs on the market, right? And you have to understand that going in. Right. So it's kind of interesting that it's at the top of anybody's list.
I know. I was surprised. It was named. It's versatile, capable, and deserving winner of our best SUV of 2024 award.
I got to be honest. I was curious, and around King of the Hammers time, I looked at Ford's website to see like what a Bronco costs. Oh my gosh, they're expensive.
I know.
I mean, everything's so are the
Everything
Wranglers right
is,
now.
yeah.
But yeah, I could imagine a world where I had a Bronco as well as the Jeep. I don't think I'll ever not have a Jeep, but they look neat. Like they're neat vehicles and they look fun, right? I don't know.
I was like, so I picked the Land Rover Defender.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of asked, I got a little help from AI to pick which ones they thought, and these were the top that AI picked.
Okay.
So I never the Land Rover Defender, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's a luxury off-road." I'm sure it's not as capable as the others, but it has this cold weather package, which has a heated windshield, heated washer jets, a heated steering wheel, which I really, really want that, and headlight washers.
Yeah.
How perfect would that be if you were in the mud? Headlight washers.
There you go. The
So
the tow rig, I've I'll just remind the listeners. I know you already know this. I have an '08 Cadillac Escalade
Cadillac, yes.
that I tow with. And one of the things that it came with was a heated rear windshield washer reservoir,
Oh,
right? And there's a button on the dash that turns on the heat, right? Because you don't need
interesting.
that on all the
Right.
time. So when I first test drove it, as I do with any vehicle I test drive, tried all the buttons to make sure the buttons work.
Right.
And that one doesn't work. And I'm like, why doesn't the button work? So I told the dealership, I'm like, hey, that button doesn't work. I thought it was the rear washer button, like to make it squirt water. But he said,
Uh-huh.
no, that's the heater. The reason it doesn't work is there was a recall because the heater was catching vehicles on fire.
Oh,
And then the recall
yeah.
was they just removed it. I'm like, well, that's a great recall.
Okay, yeah.
So be careful with your heated washer reservoir.
And okay, if you're gonna just totally do away with it, I'm sure you paid extra money for that. Are you gonna refund me
Well, I didn't
my
pay extra money for
Oh,
that.
okay.
Whoever originally bought it probably paid extra
Probably
money for
did.
that.
'Cause
I bought it used, so
the
it was
the
already gone when I bought it.
the cold weather package on
Yeah.
the Defender is an extra $700 for all that, which I thought was a pretty
Yeah,
good
right.
deal. That's a
Right.
pretty good deal. So, um, those were 2 of the news stories I found, but I was, like, really excited when I saw that the Jeep Wrangler was voted best SUV of the year. So, it does say in here, and I'm gonna, this is probably gonna make myself sound stupid here, but it introduced features like the full float Dana rear axle. What do they mean by full float?
Full float. All right. So, imagine the axle shaft that goes from the center section of the axle, where the ring and pinion, the carrier and stuff are, out to the ends where the wheels are.
Right.
A full float, the axle shaft itself does not carry the weight of the vehicle at any point. It's just the thing that propels, like it's driven from the gears, and it mates to something, a hub on the outside that spins your tire, right?
Right.
A semi float is what we have in our Wranglers. Yours should be the same as mine, I think. Yours is just a little
Uh-huh.
bigger because it's the JK and it's wider. Where the axle shaft actually has a flange at the end of it where your lug nuts are, and your wheel bolts directly onto that flange. That's called a semi float,
Oh.
right? So one end floats in the ring and pinion, or not the ring and
Mhm.
pinion, the carrier. The other end has a bearing on it, and it's what rides on the housing, right? With a full float, there's a hub at the outside that's where all the weight of the tire is. The big difference is if you break an axle shaft to the point where it has to be removed, you can still like coast on an axle that is a full float. You could physically pull that shaft out, and the hub should still be there enough to like get you off the trail. I don't know if I would drive it that way because there's no more
Right.
preload on the thing. I don't know. Maybe I can't. Maybe you can. A lot of full size or 1 ton axles are full float.
Huh. Okay.
Not
I
all
can't
of them.
bel I can't believe I've never heard that term in
Well,
what is it,
in axles
9
the
years?
size of in axles the size that you've dealt with in your Jeep,
Mhm.
um, it's not as common. I think you can get full float kits for the Wranglers, but they're not that common. I don't think I've ever seen one in person.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if there's people listening that are like shaking their fists at me like right now, like
Right.
Nick doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right.
But anyway, that's full float versus semi float.
Okay. I was seeing if there was anything extra. They use all the typical words: off-road prowess.
And which vehicle is that you're talking about?
This is the 2024 car of the year.
Oh, okay.
It's the Wrangler Rubicon, the JL.
So the JL has a full float rear axle?
That's what it says. Editor-in-chief of Cars.com had high praise for the Wrangler, stating, it's versatile, blah, blah, blah. What sets the 2024 Wrangler apart? For starters, Jeep has upped the ante on capability, introducing features like a full float Dana rear axle, 100-to-1 crawl ratio, an 8,000-pound capacity Warn winch, increased towing capability straight from the factory. These upgrades ensure that the Wrangler can tackle the toughest terrain with ease.
That's interesting. I didn't know. I didn't know they had a full float rear axle in something as small as the Wrangler. Like I said, it is possible, and I think it was videos confirmed in chat that Terraflex makes a full float conversion kit for the Wrangler. I thought so. 2024 JL Rubicon has a full float rear axle option. So there you go.
Yeah.
Videos confirms. Must be true. You read it. You read it on the internet, and videos
right.
That's all it takes for me. Must be true. Any other wild conspiracies we have to prove or disprove?
We could go on for days, days. All right. So that's all I have for the news.
5,000. Wow, a full float rear axle only increases the towing capacity to 5,000. That seems like it would go higher. I guess it still is only a Dana 44, and the engine is still only what it is. Sorry, I'm like getting all nerdy now on axles. We shouldn't.
Yeah,
we're gonna waste a bunch of time doing that. Which
it's time's up.
We're actually closing on time. We're only a minute over. What weird parallel dimension have we wandered into?
Yeah. More options means more stuff to break. Yes, that is so true.
Coming from Nikki G, who drives a 25-year-old Cherokee,
right? Red Cherokee. Red Jeeps are sexy.
Yeah, right.
That got so old.
We're not even going to start that.
Yeah.
All right.
You have to know our history to understand that. So
go
back to episode 1 and you'll find out.
Yeah, right. All right. So I think our next show, we're going to talk about tires. Tammy's got some research she's going to do to share with us. And I guess we'll probably fill in with some other just kind of experience we've had over the years with tires, different tire types, and tire rotation is what you put in here. So
talk about tire rotation.
This is a hill people will die on. So be ready for the flame.
And you know how to understand what 385, 70R, whatever, 90 or
I tell you what, if you can give me a good way to in my brain convert that madness to the old school inches, right? I will forever be in your debt because I always have to go online to a calculator to figure out.
I was just going to say it's GOOGLE.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I use. I go and I find a calculator. I go, I want a tire that's about a 35 by 1050 by 15. Tell me what that is in crazy numbers.
Right.
And it tells me.
So I will put together, Nate, a few points and what we'll talk about, and I'll get some research going, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Cool. All right. So yeah, folks, remember, if you want to find the show, you can look for us for wherever you normally find podcasts. Go to the Off-Road Insiders. I should say, not the. There's no the in there. Go to offroadinsiders.com to find all of our stuff. You can find us on social media, both Facebook and Instagram. And you can find me at swbcrawler.com and, of course, Tammy at jeepmama.com. Any other words there, Tammy?
Happy Jeeping, everyone. Have a great week, and we will see you on the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great one, folks. Oh, we should cover, right? Because we were off by a week for last week.
Oh,
right.
We're gonna go back to every
2 weeks from here and then 2 weeks from there. So we're basically resetting the every other week thing.
Yeah.
Mainly because next Monday, Tammy might or might not
I could be
ready
stuck
to actually record.
in the middle. Right, I could be stuck somewhere in the Midwest.
So we'll see you in 2 weeks from now, not next
Yes.
week, 2 weeks from now,
2
even
weeks
though
from now.
next week would have normally been our next show. So just want to get that out there. Okay. Now I think we're done.
Okay.
Right? Have a good one, everybody.
Signing off.